it has become increasingly frustrating for me to see the direction that our society has gone. I spoke with somebody today who's not in this room who said that they had a child, and when that child went to kindergarten, that child was given an iPad. And apparently that's what they do now here. And that child has been on an iPad ever since for the last 6 years. Child was described as addicted. And when they try to take the iPad away so there can be an interaction, that there is tantruming and that it is a real nightmare. So the way our society is going is crazy. It's crazy. I'm sorry, anybody hands my 5-year-old an iPad, we're going to just have a real problem with it. It doesn't work. And why we're having this electronic experiment to get our children addicted to screens is just, it's unbelievable. I would say it's beyond my imagination, but unfortunately, anyway, nothing really surprises me anymore. Although I was a little surprised that a 5-year-old was given an iPad in kindergarten. Who does that? I'm sorry, am I the only one who thinks that's ridiculous? It's ridiculous. Anyway, so that being said, what happens when we're addicted to electronics? What happens? I remember when I was in junior high, and my friend next door was getting a new Nintendo, and he offered to sell me his Atari with all of his games for $45. And so I worked and I saved up and I bought the Atari with all the games. And I came home from school, junior high, and bloop, 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 bloop. And I'm doing the whole deal. And it was, they got the joystick and everything. It was wonderful. And I did this. I'd come home from school and be on that thing in there, and, come home the next day from school and be on that thing in there. And pretty soon I'm like, I don't really think this is a good idea. I don't think this is a good idea, because what I want to do is be in this room with this thing all the time. And so eventually I put it in a bag and gave it to somebody else, because I didn't like where that was going. So if time is short, then what are we doing with our time? It's a real question. If time is short, what are we doing with our time? I remember, there was that story of St. Anthony the Great with his monks and the hunter. And I know I've probably told it recently, but I'm going to tell it again. St. Anthony is out with his monks, and he's got his monks playing a game in the desert. And a hunter comes up. And the hunter sees him and he says, "Are you the one they call Anthony the Great?" He says, "I am." He says, "The great ascetic monastic of the desert? The father of monasticism in the desert?" "That's I." "I'm astounded," said the hunter, "that Anthony the Great has his monks playing games in the desert. That's not what I expected to see from you." Anthony said, "You're a hunter." "Yes, I am." He says, "It's a bow and arrow you got right there." He says, "Yes, it is." He says, Can you take that out real quick? Can you draw it back?" He says, Oh, certainly. He puts an arrow in and he begins to draw it back. Anthony says, "Wow, can you just pull it back a little bit more?" Pulls it back a little bit more. He says, "Okay, sir. Can you just one more? Can you pull it back a little bit further?" He says, "Anthony, as a hunter, I know if I pull it back too far, it will snap my bow." Anthony said, "Very well. And if I work my monks too hard, they will snap as well." Right? So the desert fathers know that it can't be all hard work all the time. But the opposite is also true. It cannot be all hard play all the time. It cannot be staring at my screen all the time. It cannot be that we become largely just distracted and amused and entertained to death. So what do we do with our time? What are we doing with our time? We just had a funeral on Monday. I was up in Indianapolis, Funeral for Father Stephen Bauman of blessed memory. Father Stephen was a man of prayer. Father Stephen, over the years, has baptized dozens of prisoners in the prison system, while being a full-time pastor at a large church. Father Stephen was a wonderful, angelic man with a beautiful sense of humor, who died suddenly over the weekend, unexpectedly. Okay. When you go to a funeral and you listen to the hymns at an Orthodox funeral, the very hymns are written and designed to remind each of us that our time is coming up. There's a cliche that, kids, they live like they're never going to die, but it's not just kids, it's most of us, I think, it seems. This time is given to us as a gift. It's a gift. Jesus talks about the talents that he's given to us. And he seeks and desires for us to use those talents to bring about fruit, to invest those talents. These are the words that he uses. And so what I want to talk about then is, how should we use our time? I think, number one, it's really important to realize how important it is to be at church when we're able to be at church. Now, here we are on a Wednesday night. That's good. Most of you were here on Sunday. Glory to God. Some of you came on Saturday night. That's great. I didn't used to understand why some of my priest friends from seminary had daily services at their parishes. I probably called some of them extremists. That's me now, I guess. That's us, bunch of extremists. But I remember it was 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, and it was June, and the news was horrible. Everything in the news was horrible. People, talking about, I just the awful news at that time. And at the forefront of the news at that point was, the rights of youth to mutilate their own bodies if they thought they should be a different gender or something. This was this was on the forefront of the news, and it was making me so sick. So sick, because those children, they're children. It was making me so sick, and I became physically ill. And I said, Lord, I can't do anything to change any of this. I don't know what to do, because I'm feeling so sick and I don't know what to do. Tell me, what can I do to contribute to a change? 2 words. Pray more. Now, I thought, that sounds simple enough. So I called my wife. I said, this is what happens. Can we start having daily services? Are you okay with that? She says, absolutely. So I told the parish on Sunday, we're going to start having daily services because I need that. I didn't know if anybody would come. But we always have, we have a liturgy. We always have between 12 and 24 weekday liturgy. And the thing is that we have to think with an Orthodox mindset. We can't just say, well, how much does that help if, just 12 people come to a liturgy? Think about the words of the liturgy. In behalf of all and for all. For those who are present, for those who are absent for honorable reason, for the whole world. When we're in there, Jesus says, if there are 2 or 3 gathered in my name, I am there in the midst of them. Right? So what we do in here whether a couple people show up or whether the church is full, we're entreating God in behalf of all and for all. Prayer is so important. It is so incredibly important. You know, I can't remember who specifically it was who said, one of the great monastic fathers who said, the world will end when the final liturgy has been served. It's prayer, the grace of God that keeps the world together. We need to pray together. We also need to pray at home, alone. It's important to pray quietly. If we're in a family, I remember, a number of times when couples are in couples counseling, premarital counseling, and we start talking about prayer. And I like to stress how important it is that families pray together. If you pray together at meals, if you pray together, if the family's all together in the morning, for example, or whenever it might be, that the family prays together. But that the individual members of the family pray alone. You never stop praying by yourself. Because we need those intimate moments with God when it's just God and me and we're in conversation. And because if you're not alone, there's always a part of us. It's our pride, I think. Always a part of us that wonders what the other person in the room is thinking about what we're praying. Right? It's just kind of inescapable. We want our prayer to sound eloquent. We want to, if I'm alone with God, I say, Lord, I'm dying here. I need help. I have nobody else. I can say that alone. Probably won't say that in front of my kids, at the dinner table. You'd be like, Mom, can you call somebody? Dad's losing it. But all of us need to have those I'm dying here moments with God. If we don't have them, I think we're not really being real. Because all of us are dying. We all are. All of us. That's just the way that it is. So we need prayer. Corporate prayer. We need our personal prayers alone. We need prayers with our family. Pray with you. If you have children, pray with your children at bedtime. It's important. We need to be looking out for other people. Recognizing that other people are suffering. Recognizing that other people have needs. I asked somebody today, I said, how are you? He said, I'm doing great. I am such a liar. Those two things came out of his mouth within 5 seconds. And I thank God the second followed the first. Because then we got to talk for an hour about what it was that was destroying him from the inside out. Right? It's interesting. A day in the life of a priest is a very interesting thing. I remember one of our young converts in college about 15 years ago looked at me and he said, Father, what do you do all day? Like, I got Sunday, I get Saturday night, I get Wednesday night. What are you doing the rest of the time? I said, it's a great question. Let's just think about today. Yeah, planning a funeral, talking to somebody who is terminal, talking to a married couple who's on the brink, talking to a child who's lost their faith. And I went through the things that I had done that day in my mind. And then, like today, I put a break in my schedule to go for a walk. 2 people showed up with urgent needs during that block. You know who sent them? Who sent them? God sent them. Because God knew that I had a break. Right? And it's so important that we use our time. I've been thinking a lot, since the Metropolitan was speaking in Chicago, and I haven't get to talk a lot to you about that, but it was a very encouraging time with him, talking about his vision for this archdiocese. And one of the things that he stressed was, we have been brought to a crisis point as the Orthodox Church in America. We've been brought to a crisis point. We are in crisis now because we have so many people coming to the church And we don't have enough priests. We're in crisis, officially. It's a crisis. We can stamp it on the outside of the building, but it sounds like complaint. We're in crisis. But crisis forces us to grow. And one of the things that he said was, he said, we have the liturgical priesthood, and we have the priesthood of all believers. He says the priesthood of all believers need to do their part. And he's right. He's right. That means that everybody has a job in the church. Everybody has a job, a role. And you might say, well, I can't really get out of the house. I have people that I call when I have a really, really, really hard case, like a parishioner who's really, really broken. Or somebody calls the church and says, I'm on the verge of taking my own life, or something. I have a very short list of people that I call and I say, I need you to pray for Bob right now, please. Please stop what you're doing and pray for Bob. Right? Those people stop and pray. And I will tell you, I have seen some amazing things happen to Bob from those kind of prayers. Okay? That's a person who fills a real need in the church. Right? There are people who, if I have something that needs to be picked up from somewhere, people say, Father, if you ever need me to do anything, I'm just a phone call away. If something needs to be picked up and there's no way for me to get to it, and I say, I'm so sorry to call you same day, but we've got stuff at this place that needs to be picked up and I can't get there. Of course, Father, I'll bring it to the church. It'll be there before 5. Right? Simple things. But without that, you guys wouldn't have had what I needed. Right? So it seems like a simple thing. Someone, I'll just swing by and pick it up on the way there. No big deal. Sounds like a simple thing. It's not. I'm going to tell you, if you look out there, if you just look at our property, we have this big, beautiful property, right? And there are always things that need to be done. I came to the church this week, and somebody had left paper plates on the lawn. Sounds like a simple thing, but people drive through here all the time looking at this beautiful church. Oh, look at this church. Oh, look, they leave paper plates on their lawn. Brothers and sisters, these things should not be so, right? Whoever, if you're at the church and you see paper plates on the lawn, please put them away. That would be a huge help. It sounds simple. You know who's watching you do that? God. Right? It sounds so small and simple. But these things are so important. So important. I love when I pull up and unexpectedly I see somebody sweeping the pebbles back into the playground area. You know, why? Because kids will try to take those rolly cars on the pebbles and they're like, and it just doesn't work. So the reason you have that whole round thing is so the kids can go around there with their little wheelie things. But if the pebbles are there, it doesn't work. So God bless the people who pick up the broom and do those simple things. There are other things, in our neighborhoods. Think about our neighborhoods. Think if you have a neighbor, you hear that someone is suffering, you hear that someone has died. People are really confused about death. People are really confused about death. I remember my father telling me that when he was little and his mother got tuberculosis and she died, and he went to the pastor and said, I just don't know what to do. And the pastor said, son, you're just going to have to forget about her. What? What? So people are really confused about death. And anything we can do to help people work through a death is really, really important. Just from an Orthodox perspective, I love to tell the story of the 96-year-old woman who came to the church for a funeral and then became Orthodox. And I remember the priest said, ma'am, I'm not trying to talk you out of this, but you're 96. You've lived a long time in your current religious practice. I'm just curious, why is it that you decided to become Orthodox at 96? And she said, it was a funeral service. You guys aren't afraid to tell the truth. Call it what it is. Dust and bones and ashes, moths and worms. You're not afraid to call it what it is. You don't pretty it up. You just tell the truth. So, what orthodoxy has to offer the world is perhaps greater than we even can imagine. We might think, well, I found the truth, I found the church, this is great, and I'm going to just, sit back and relax and enjoy the liturgy. And I can tell people it sounds very fancy. Sophisticated. I'm Eastern Orthodox. That only gets us so far. I've been studying recently the stages of the spiritual life. It's something I've never really considered. I've looked at the monastic fathers talking about stages of the spiritual life, but never really considered it as a what do you call it? Like a unit of steps. Right? Not like St. John of the Ladder, where he's got, I think, 30 steps, and he's talking about these different rungs on the ladder. That's kind of what it's like, but it's not really the stage of the spiritual life where it talks about a person, who first they're in disbelief, and then they're an inquirer. They come to the church and they think, is there a God? And if there is, who is it? And then they start finding out about who God is, and then they start to believe. Right? And then they start to try to live as a good Christian. And in this commentator said that's where most people stop, trying to live as a good Christian. But then there are some people who go into what is called the dark night of the soul. Some kind of a crisis. Something drives them past the comfort zone of, I'm going to try to be a good Christian. It drives them deep to where they begin to look at themselves and really see their own brokenness, their own sinfulness, and begin to really experience internally what it is that Christ is offering them. And it's a transformative night of the soul. It's something that they have to get through. And then as they begin to get through it and they come out of it, they have a new vision of life. The new vision of life is one of selfless sacrifice and service. And then that final stage of the spiritual life is martyric sacrifice, where I'm willing to die for people all around me, even maybe looking for it. Yeah, no, I'll step in the way. Maria of Paris. No, don't burn them. I'll go. Right? Where it is a transformation that takes place. This is where we should all be working toward. This is what we should be working toward. We can't rest on our religious laurels. We cannot get comfortable. It's like in the church. What's the traditional posture of worship? Standing and flat on your face. Neither of which are extremely comfortable, especially on a cold stone floor, as it would have been most of history. But what have we done? We brought in squishy, beautiful chairs. We've put air conditioning units in here, and when one of them's not firing right and we can only get it down to 70, I complain. Right? We have to be careful to never become comfortable. Christians are not supposed to be comfortable. The fathers talk about comfortable as like anathema. They said, don't get comfortable. So, what I want to challenge us to, I really want to challenge us, each of us, every single one of us, to become that advanced Christian. To be willing to look at our own garbage and to ask God to help us take it out. Really, to be self-reflective. It's so easy to put on a good face. I have 100 knots on my prayer rope. How many do you have? Right? Now, I'm pro prayer rope. But the thing that we kind of gravitate toward is, you got your prayer rope, And what else? I got my book, my Lives of the Desert Fathers book. You know, to look the part, because we want to look the part, because we really want to be the part, until we realize how much that hurts to actually be the part, right? It does, it hurts. It involves crucifixion. It involves death to the self, to the selfish will. It involves trusting God with abandonment, right? Or with abandon. Trusting God. Not trying to control my future. Not trying to control other people. Not trying to control the way things are moving. I remember when I was suffering with depression, probably, I don't know, maybe 4 or 6 months in Alaska. If you've ever been depressed, a day or two is too long. And depression in the winter for months on end is horrendous. And there's no light in Alaska in the winter. Bad. And I remember going to my priest and saying, "This is terrible. Do you have any idea how this depression comes in waves?" Anybody ever have waves of depression? It's like waves. I was a surfer as a kid, and you'd wait, the swells would come in, you know, and there would be these waves that would come, and they were it was called sets. There'd be sets of swells. And you just wait, you know, you'd wait for the next set to come in, and then you'd start swimming for it. You know, you weren't afraid of the wave, you were going to ride the wave. And when you're depressed, it's easy to become afraid of the waves. Oh, here comes another wave. I told my priest, I said, "There's these waves of depression. You know these are waves?" He says, "Oh yes. You just have to learn to be still and let them wash over you." That sounds too easy for... So I tried it. I thought, okay. And so I was just still. Lord have mercy. Here comes the wave. I'm getting anxious. I'm not going to be anxious. I'm just going to let it wash over me. Lord have mercy. And it was just felt like a wave going right over my head and then subsiding. I thought, I should have talked to my priest months ago. It was good advice. And the waves get smaller and smaller, and then eventually, glory to God, they went away. Right? So people in the world need the church. They need God. They need the truth. They need wise spiritual counsel. They need the writings of the fathers and mothers of the church. They need all of these things. It's so important. And the world doesn't have them. And many of you who are new, you're like, "Yeah, I didn't know about this a year ago." Right. And there are a whole lot of people out there who don't know about this. And they need us to be willing to do whatever it takes to be who God created us to be. Each of us has to be willing to do that. Somebody said that to me today. They said, "I feel like, I'm looking at this big forest, and the person who I'm supposed to be is on the other end of that forest. And I have to figure out how to get through that forest." I said, first of all, don't discount the journey. The time in the forest is really important. It's just as important as what's on the other side of that forest. Secondly, remember the scriptures. The Lord is a light unto my path, a lamp unto my feet. What is it that we can see if we're walking in the dark, holding a lamp? How big is that perimeter of light, that diameter? What is it, maybe 5 or 6 feet? You can't see very far ahead of yourself. You can just see a little way. I'm not talking about the new LED flashlights that can see 6 miles, all right? Yeah, you can shine them at the moon and it lights it up, I'm talking about the lamp, right? If you're in the dark forest and you're walking and you have a small light, it shows you about 4 or 5 feet in front of you. And that's what we need. We want to have the high power. Bing! We want that. But the scriptures tell us that's not what we get. What we get is we get enough to see the next step or two. And then we have to trust God that as we take that next step or two, that lantern in our house in our hand is going to illuminate the next step or two. Right?
And that takes trust. And that's called faith. That the Lord loves us more than we love ourselves. That he loves us more than we can comprehend. And we have to learn to trust him with all of these steps. So brothers and sisters, that's really just what I wanted to say. I really want to see all of us, every single one of us, seek Christ first. Not just to have him, written in on Sunday mornings or whatever, but to seek Christ with every breath. Every morning, when we wake up, the first thing, praise God and thank him for a new day and ask him to help us to live this day according to his will, to its fullest. And then to go and live that way. And at the end of the day, to thank God for another day and to keep us safe through the night. Then we wake up the next morning and start over again. All right, that's all I have. God bless you. Anybody have any questions? Everybody ready to go for the dark night of the soul? Yes, sir.
Well, you mentioned death. Where is the time?
A little louder, I couldn't hear you.
I don't know, I'm kind of confused that we've got limited time, we've got the end times, we've got death, and yet then again, we're told about eternal life, and at the same time, I was also recently having a good conversation with another priest about how Orthodoxy teaches us to become comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Great.
So this whole thing I just said about time, I'm confused.
Time. So, the long and the short of it is, we are supposed to be willing to be uncomfortable, to will to be uncomfortable, if that's, that's what is serving Christ and his kingdom most, right? And that we are to make the most of the time that we have, that we are living in the end times, because the end times is the age of the church, right? But then, of course, there is the end times that people like to talk about, the apocalypse, the end of times, right? So we're not denying that there's an end of times, an apocalypse, but just to say that we are supposed to live every day as though it were the end. Jesus says, no man knows the hour when the Son of Man shall return, right? So we should be living as though every moment is our last moment, and looking always for opportunities to serve Christ in this world. And if we do that, it's going to make us uncomfortable. Jesus in Gethsemane said, Father, if it be thy will, let this cup pass from me. He's about to be tortured and crucified. And then in the same breath he says, nevertheless, thy will be done, not my will be done. He's teaching us to pray. Lord, if it be thy will, let this cancer pass from me. If it be thy will, let this horrendous job situation pass from me. Let this horrible classroom situation pass from me. Nevertheless, thy will be done, not my will be done. I loved this today. Somebody said this to me today. I get so many just amazing tidbits from talking to people, because people have such beautiful insights. Somebody said today, they said, in the Old Testament, God in the desert didn't make the Red Sea disappear so the children of Israel could pass through. He made a way through it. So sometimes we entreat God to take this cross from us, to take this job from us, to take this problem, this sickness, whatever from us. This person said, sometimes I just have to realize God's going to make a way through it. Even if he doesn't take it away, he's going to make a way through it. That's the Orthodox spiritual life. Seeing God working with us in every moment, in every circumstance. whether it be joyful or adverse, whether it be complicated or simple, whatever it is, that God's there with us in that moment.